All right, so welcome to this Thrive Together Masterclass. It's October 23rd, 2024, and we're going to be talking about preparing for a stellar 2025. So we're already significantly through Q4, but that's not over yet. The year's not over yet, and there's still plenty of time to really set ourselves up for success next year, wrap up some projects, get some more wins under our belt, and really set the stage for what we want to achieve next year. And so we have a very special guest today, Kathleen Metcalf, who I think needs no introduction. She's our fearless leader here at Cambium, and quite a few years ago now, Kathleen, you came up with this admin year-end checklist because every year it kept coming up, right? That we might as well have a plan for how to prepare to end the year intentionally and set up ourselves for success for the next year. And so we put this document together. It's evolved over time and been adapted. And so we have our most recent version. And so Kathleen will be going through that plan and how to set goals and how to wrap up projects. And we're just really excited to hear what you have to say, Kathleen.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for the invitation to participate. And it's so great to see some longtime friends and colleagues in the room. And so that's terrific. And for those that catch the recording afterward, I want to set some context for this conversation, which is how important it is that the operations people on the team value their perspective. Because you see the business from a different angle than the lead agent or the business owner, depending on how your team is structured. And what you see in terms of the back of the house, how things are organized, what things went well, what was harder to execute than anyone really thought was ever going to be harder to execute. And so your perspective has great value. And this is the time in the year in particular to be able to review things, get things organized, and then prepare as much as possible on your own, and then bring that to your lead agent, your business owner, and be able to say, here's what I see, here's what I'd like to do, here are my ideas, and then, and then work together to collaborate and get those things put into place. Because this, is a direct reflection on Susan Scott's book, Fierce Conversations, and her analogy that everyone on a team stands on a different color of the beach ball. And they only see life from their color, their perspective, green, orange, yellow, blue, white, whatever colors your beach ball is. And so we would sometimes think, well, it's perfectly common sense. Why can't they see that? Why don't they know that? It's because they're green and you're blue. That's the only reason. So now to be able to recognize and hold dear that your perspective is yours and their perspective is theirs. And now we have to find business operations that work well together, but your perspective matters. And so having a voice for that is important. And so this is an outline that we keep evolving. And so it's really meant to be what I refer to as prompts. And so I'll share my screen. You're also welcome to use the chat if there are particular topics or angles, observations that you've had that you want to bring into this conversation. I'm happy to take all that into consideration, and we can revise this. Okay, can you see my year-end checklist? Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm trying to pop the PDF in the chat. For some reason, I'm running into a challenge, so I might just give you a link to it in Google Drive, everybody, if you can, so you can see it there on your own as well.
Yes, and it's a free download for us. So we categorize this into some different sections. Organizing a workspace, managing documents, collaborating on a team, engaging with clients, prospecting and marketing, administrative tasks, documentation and resources, presentation and preparation, and systems and support. So those are just some overall topics that we created. And then we included, that the following are ideas that can be implemented, particularly between Thanksgiving and New Year's, so that you're maximizing this time, depending on whether or not your business is busy in fourth quarter or your business slows down in fourth quarter. That is not the same everywhere. For some people, they're getting into resort business. And for others, it's the after school. Now everybody's hurrying to get sold because the investors want to spend their money by the end of the year. So now all the investments are coming to fruition. So it really is different in different places. And if the agent on the team says, we're not busy, I don't know why you wouldn't have time to do these different things, or we are busy. I know. So depending on the perspective, once again, on the beach ball, there is always back of the house work. There is always work to be done in administration and operations, no matter what is happening with coming soon, active, pending, and closed deals. This goes on no matter what is happening in terms of volume. So organizing a workspace, we were just chatting before the recording started about working from home. So depending on what you have for your office space, a desk, a chair, supply closet, drawers, how you organize things, it is time to be able to look at, is this working? Is this working for you? Are you comfortable? Do you have an ergonomic situation set up if you spend a lot of time at your desk? And if you are working from home, do you need to change it up a little bit? If you are in an office and it's noisy because you're in an open space, is there something that you need to do for headphones or for certain times of the day when you do different things? So really looking at how your space is set up and maintained, and not just being in, I don't know, what would you call that? Like just being
Like
in neutral
auto.
mode.
Yeah, you're just like on autopilot. I have this, my example would be my desk chair that I've had and I got from IKEA 12 years, like 11 years ago or something, and it's falling apart, and there are little flakes of the fake leather that sometimes end up on my hand. And you would think it's so past time, but I just, the idea of researching a new chair and all that felt really overwhelming. And so recently my lower back started yelling at me. I was like, oh, I should probably get around to that. Yeah, so I got a new chair and a new ball, one of those balls, those
Yeah, that
like
you stand
exercise
on?
ball. Yeah, or you sit on
Sit
it,
on it.
but it has more mobility, and
Yeah.
so I was like, it feels really great to invest in my setup in a way that I just didn't even think about it because it worked enough. It worked well enough.
Yes. I mean, I have now an electric stand-up sit-down desk. I didn't get it for myself after I was in business 9 years.
You're
I
worth
don't know,
it, Kathleen.
right? I had some hand-me-down desk from my dad, and then I
Yeah,
think I
we
had like
make do. We're frugal. We want to cut down on the expenses, but these things they pay off to invest in our comfort.
yes. And so being able to really look at that, we used to be so set up in real estate. Nancy was sharing with us, right, that the November 1st, she'll be retiring. Yay, Nancy. Thank you for all your incredible service. But, we used to be set up in offices to handle a lot of paper. We used to need to have file drawers and boxes. And this time of year, we would take everything from the drawer, put it in the box, label the box, have the box go in storage, and we don't maybe have so much of that anymore. And so what is now that process of having the storage that you need for the things that you work on, which might also include a computer, software storage, iCloud can storage, what do you call this separate, an
Like
external
external
hard
hard
drive,
drive.
right? My son's an IT professional, hooked me up with the external hard drive. So, I dump everything from downloads and put it in there because it's easier for me to download out of Google Drive and attach PDF when I'm sending things to clients. But that also means I fill my download file full of stuff that doesn't really need to be there anymore. So what are those habits that you have, which takes us into sort of document management, this next section, and really being able to look at the flow of where you keep things, where you put things, and what is the ease with which you have that. One of our clients figured out recently that if they, in the beginning of a deal, uploaded more things to Dotloop, that their virtual assistant in the Philippines had greater access to filing things, moving things, and taking care of the file from an earlier standpoint, but couldn't do that if they weren't uploaded earlier. and they had been keeping a paper file. All right. So this was an important transition and step to be able to look at. Now all these materials can be moved more easily, which freed up the in-person person to be in touch with clients, calling past clients for customer service calls, and had the virtual assistant really able to be a pivotal person, moving information up, updating spreadsheets or different forms of, they use Trello for their project and transaction management, but then she could upload, things and be able to be on target because she could see everything. But that was a document management change that came, as a function of looking at what is their workflow. And Laura, you've been our systems guru for workflow. What are some things that you have seen for document management where people can make improvements?
I've seen that in our digital age, we don't have much of a deleting practice. We just usually opt for more storage space, or, it's an era where we take 17, photos of the same thing, and we never go back and delete the ones we don't like. And these things accumulate over time. I think that we do have to be mindful of, the return on investment in terms of our energy. And so, going through and deleting things isn't always the sexiest practice, and it isn't always something that's going to mean we can necessarily do more transactions, do more deals. But we do know that without a deleting practice, the Google Drive, the Dropbox, it can become a bit of a dumpster fire, and so sort of regularly checking in on what do we actually not need anymore, what can be filed, even a archive folder that we just dump things into and move off, that you could still search for, but you get it out of the way, out of sight. I think this is sort of the opportunity to weed and pick through and delete and get rid of, which, sets the stage for sort of a digital environment that's much more conducive to focus and intention. Because we also see on teams, like, one of the things that's especially apparent when we're hiring, but for everybody, it can take a really long time to find information, to find the right version of something if there are multiple versions of the same document hanging out in there. And, maybe you're the one who knows exactly where to go to get the thing we need, but the new person is searching and now has to ask you, where do I find that version of the thing, or where do I go to get this? And so, it's a moment to take a look at how we have files organized, and clear things out so that we can be faster in getting the information that we need. And we can feel good about it being, the current version, or just one source of truth, as opposed to multiple versions kind of hanging out there.
Yes, and this sort of leads into a conversation about how folders, documents, and emails, even in the subject line, are labeled. What kind of system is being used, like street name, number, client name, or how you're tracking threads in email, how to be able to find information, and so that things are consistently labeled. And I know that we do have some suggestions for that, Laura. I think we might also be able to make that, we could talk about how we access that as maybe a free download after this, to be able to see what are some ways in which to organize filing. Because this is also one of those review processes to say, how easy is it to find this stuff if we want to go back and do it? And maybe, as Laura said, it's easy for you because you did it. But what if now, right, we think about growth and we think about expansion. We're always looking for how your careers in administration can blossom. And so that means you might have an assistant at one point in growth. And so then you don't always want to be the person who is the only one who knows stuff, because then that's very time consuming to have to be able to transfer all that information verbally. It's way too much to talk about. So to be able to look at digitally in particular, how things are labeled, where they're organized, and how that's being done. So I know that Tammy Shimagawa on our team, who does work as a fractional director of operations and does do some of this kind of file sorting and management, depending on the scope of the project, has done wonders with our files because everything is really been narrowed down into only a few options, and things are consistently labeled, and it's way better than, you know, organically the way I had grown the business. She was able to look at it with fresh eyes and with a different level of organizational systems and have that really come to a new level. And so, you know, how is that possible in your business?
Yes,
In
I just found it, Kathleen. We have a file naming conventions PDF that we can share over for how exactly, you know, some best practices on how to name files.
Excellent. Thank you for finding that. So if we also turn our attention to looking forward to a new year, in the team collaboration section, it's assisting your agent in setting team goals for the next year. Do some of you already do that, or already work with your agent on setting goals for the team or for themselves or for your position? Is that something that you already do? Yes, I see. Abby? Well, I can't hear you, Abby. It shows that your microphone's on. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Wonderful. Yes, we are constantly talking about goals. We have a 15-month plan, a 3-year plan, and so forth. My biggest thing is dialing in on 2025.
Yes.
It's good to have the long term, but what are we looking at for next year? You know?
Yes. And I think this is where, right, seeing the long term and being able to see some history. And then this is always what we like to say, this is a very personal decision. It doesn't mean you always have to grow bigger. It doesn't mean you always have to do more. But then what is it? Because from an operations standpoint, how helpful is it for you, Abby, to be able to anticipate?
It's very helpful for sure, because we all know how agents are. They like to rapid fire um, a lot of different things all at once, and I like to know what's coming my way so I can prepare and plan and start thinking ahead, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And so if you know that an agent wants to do 50 deals a
Mhm.
year, then it's not a surprise that you're going to do one a week.
Right,
It's not a
right,
surprise that you're going to launch 2 listings in 1 week and 2 the next week. And then it's not a surprise, and it doesn't have that same sort of, I don't know, like getting crashed in the waves feeling of, I didn't know this was coming. Oh, no, there's
Mhm.
more. Oh, no, there's more. It wants to be, oh, yes, there's more. All right, we're on track, right? It's a totally different experience just based on whether or not you were expecting it.
Right.
So being able to have some conversation and also to be able to look at if they have a format that they like to follow. We have the Busy Agent Growth Playbook as a free download, which takes an agent and the team through what's the vision, what's the mission, what are the goals and the roles on the team, and how many. What does that then mean? So, like Abby, right? Jim is a Mike Ferry trained agent, so they're very accustomed to looking at what does that mean in terms of number of contacts I need to make, the number of appointments I need to have, the number of potential contracts I need to write, the number of listings I need to take and sell, and how many buyer deals, of really being able to break that down. But there are some agents that haven't been trained in that same way or track at that level of detail. They might prospect or do lead generation in a different format. And so being able to also then see the formula is also helpful, because then that really sort of takes us to our next category, which is client engagement. Of what do you want to do to stay in touch with people? And do you want to send a holiday mailing, or are there calendars or notes that you want to send to clients or current sellers or buyers or different neighborhoods if you have a farm? And then how are you also setting up the pipeline in fourth quarter for first quarter? Because this is sometimes the roller coaster of a slow first quarter, is because fourth quarter was potentially, maybe there weren't as many closings, but it doesn't mean we still can't prime the pump, as it were, for listings coming on in the spring or in the new year, depending on, what language the agents are using with their clients. But being able to make that decision, I also left a message coincidentally yesterday for Tammy on our team within 2025. I'd actually like to set up a budget, because I don't think I've ever really set a budget for staying in touch with people. We've had ideas, and since a lot of it is digital, it doesn't actually have a new cost other than the monthly subscription to the software. But I think I'd actually like to do more of that going forward. And so I'd like to, save every month to be able to anticipate what that might be. And so what is that awareness for you and your agent to be able to look at what is that kind of engagement? I also know from some of my clients that client events often are being taken from what's bigger to maybe what's smaller. Are you also seeing that trend for your agent or in your in your business, in your area?
So for us, we've only done one client event, and it was very, very, very small.
Okay.
We weren't anticipating a lot to begin with. Um, but again, it was our first event. It was a learning experience.
Yes.
But I'm seeing some of the other agents, not within EXP or our, brokerage, but other agents in Indiana who are they're not scaling their events down.
Mm-hmm.
They're renting movie theaters out still. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to Top Golf and, renting that space out. So I'm not seeing anything being scaled down here in Indiana, but I'm sure it's being done elsewhere.
And I think that's a choice, right? That's also depending on where someone is in their business. But to know an event could be having, there's an art opening at a museum and you want to invite 4 past clients, right? That can be technically a client event, or it can be a party that costs $20,000. They're all potential client events, but it really then goes to, what are your goals?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And then what is the appropriate client engagement, and how does that fit into the lifestyle, the time, the investment, and I guess also maybe the population, of like what your clients would like. One of our favorite
And what they
books,
expect,
yeah, what they expect,
right? Because
yes,
if if they're used to that, then it's sort of, you're going to need to provide it. But I always have so much trouble with ROI. It's hard to track
yes,
ROI
it
and,
is.
set a specific budget that you're going to get the return on for the event.
Yes, and what that might be, because this is one of our favorite books, Hug Your Customers, by Jack Mitchell. And I particularly like him for 2 reasons. One, he had fashion retail store in Connecticut. And so I have a retail career before I had a real estate career. And I just really related to the fact that he set up a custom database to be able to know what his customers did, how they lived, how they worked, so that he could know what they needed to wear. And then their salespeople would be able to say, we have in new wool coats because we understand you're going, to Ireland, and it's been a couple of months since you were able to upgrade your ties, or whatever it was. And so I loved that idea, and have a past colleague from when I was an agent in San Francisco, who's also a past client in Marin County, who put tags in his database of the hobbies or certain elements of his clients' lives, so that he could do customized invitations or small gatherings for things like an art museum, or a wine tasting, or a particular sporting event, or a dog parade, like whatever there might be in his area. So he created tags to be able to search that in his database. And some of that, right, is right in line with Hug Your Customers, and being able to know, what do you want that to be like in the new year or in the coming years? And so how does that then match with your client engagement? I also really like this bullet that says, confirm all January listing and buyer appointments by December 20th. We've adopted this in our coaching world, that we book our clients who are currently coaching with us through the year, through the end of January. So there's no momentum loss over the holidays. And working with us is almost always month to month, so it doesn't really matter. You can, still cancel anytime or change things or reschedule things. But the idea is you're trying to make sure that over the end of the year, there's no momentum loss. And people are like, oh, I totally forgot I had that appointment with you on January 7th. You want to be able to confirm that close to the end of the year so that when people are potentially unplugging, traveling, just turning their attention to their families, that you don't get to lose out in that, and that you've been able to take care of things and remind people, because in some of the times they had no intention of blowing you off, but maybe they might have if you hadn't, reminded them.
Yeah, they're distracted and you don't want them to have to make, business or financial decisions while they're busy with their family.
Right, right. So this next topic actually, Abby, reminds me of Jim, your agent, prospecting and marketing, because there is a practice where agents sometimes on New Year's Day call expired listings. And depending on where the market is and whether or not expired listings are very popular, happening very much, right? It used to be potentially more when the economy was different, but it can still be there depending on the market. And so what is your agent's intention for all their lead follow-up? For maybe there are all kinds of leads that went into follow-up boss that, still don't have a tag on them. And maybe we don't know if someone followed up because they called on their cell phone. And so really cleaning up that lead follow-up. Are there phone numbers that that the agent wants to be researched? Are there things that need to be purged, right? In terms of Laura talking about, right? This is a dead lead. And I know Mike Ferry has an expression like, if you have leads that you're carrying around that haven't returned your calls, that you've reached out to multiple times, it's false hope.
Mm.
And it would actually be better sometimes for the agent to file them in the round file, to throw them away, and to recognize they really only have 3 leads, not 13 or 33 or 300. They really only have 3 because these are the ones who are actually engaging with them, or that they're still chasing and haven't given up yet. And so this also can be sort of a sobering element from in fourth quarter of, all right, where do we really stand? And is there something we should purge? And what do we want to look at? And the third bullet talks about research marketing materials for the new year, including postcards or direct mail. Do some of your agents do direct mail? Is this a part of what you do? Nancy, yes? Jessica does that. And is Jim doing direct mail, Abby?
We don't. It's something that we're looking at, but not right now.
Yeah. And I don't know, Jessica, if you can chime in or put in the chat whether or not you do in New York. Because do you?
Hi, sorry. I'm just dealing with something. I haven't honestly been able to engage too much today.
That's all right.
But yeah, I'm sorry. Could not.
My question was direct mail. If you do postcards or direct mail, paper mailings.
We have done direct mail with not much success, to be honest. We've tried to be consistent. We did it for about 9 to 12 months to specific buildings, and not much happened.
Yeah. And so these experiments are valuable, right? To be able to see how long is long and what is the investment and what is the purpose. Thank you, Jessica. I do have a client in Florida who is doing a probate method. She's sending a letter, and then the second mailing is the letter comes with a brochure, is a little 3-fold. And then the second mailing is a postcard. And then I think there is one other step after that, which actually may be a phone call rather than a paper. But she's already had 2 listings.
Wow.
It's already been successful. The brochure is really beautifully done and very reassuring because, right, it's going to the person who's probably responsible for an estate because someone has passed away. That person is usually maybe out of state or isn't live at, at that property. And so this is one of those things where experienced agents who really can be trusted are useful in this segment of the market because this family needs to have an agent who knows what they're doing that they can trust. And so this presentation seems to be very successful. And I think each mailing, I want to say, is 100 at a time. So I think out of a mailing of 200, there have been 2 listings taken and sold with 2 testimonials already because they're very happy, right? So that's a pretty high return on investment. All things considered, it has certainly paid for itself to continue. But this also goes to if it's a past client mailing, which is perhaps different than a farm, right? So if there are people that you know who already know, like, and trust you, or if this is people that you're gaining credibility with because they're getting to know you through your mailing. And so, right, all of these things can have different outcomes. The next category is administrative tasks. And this is one that really hit during the COVID shutdown, where the wall calendars and the whiteboards, they were just like they could have just been set on fire. Like everyone was like, I don't have my whiteboard, I can't see the calendar, right? And so I do think it's important to keep in mind the transparency that is useful on the team. And are you realizing that depending on how your team is structured, like I didn't know that buyer's agent wasn't available because I can't see their calendar. Or I didn't know that my agent had changed that appointment because they're using a paper, Filofax. And I didn't know. So notice if you're having those observations, that directly impacts perhaps how calendar management is working on the team. And there are different ways of sharing calendars, and maybe Laura, you can chime in about this so that there can still be privacy, but at least we know you're available, you're not available.
Yeah, there's certainly settings in the Google calendars where you can show all the event detail. There's the whole range of permission from you just see that they're busy all the way through to you can let your admin or adjust your calendar. The agent can give you permission to make edits to the invites. So that's a setting that you can have, kind of workspace wide, or you can do individually depending on what the need is. But it is nice, to have those overlapping calendars. At least we do it in Cambium. So I can pull up anyone's calendar if I want to and try to find an available time for us to meet across all our time zones. And so the view, that view is so valuable, but it doesn't have to clear up my space. I don't have to look at it if I don't
you can
need
turn
to.
it on, turn it off.
Yeah, I'll go kind
be able to look and then turn it off so that you're not looking at a lot of clutter. So if your agent's going for a pedicure on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock, it can just say busy. We don't need to know that. But if you don't care that we know that you're going to get pedicure on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock because you worked all weekend, there's an understanding there. I have had to make sure, because I have an online scheduling system and as a calendar, I have to make sure I put drive time on my calendar. Otherwise, I can get appointments booked that I can't attend to because I'm in the car because I was at an appointment. And so making sure that those kind of things that you're looking at. So it's not just a listing appointment, it's how far away is the property. And so how long do they have to drive to get to the listing appointment? And so those kind of things become really helpful of being able to see where people are and how we can have the greatest efficiency. Because depending on where you are on your team for goals, this is also sometimes when you begin to look at how much time are you needing to spend out of the office versus in the office. So do you need a sign company to put signs up? Do you need to ask your photographer who goes to the property on their own to use a combo lockbox? Like, what are the steps that you can put into place for efficiency One of the teams I've worked with for a long time was still going in person to pick up commission checks because their brokerage didn't do direct deposit until they really asked. And so then they finally were able to get that. And so that was a big deal to be able to stop going to pick up paper checks anymore. And so then what are those things that you begin to look at administratively that they can be considered an effective measure, but they're also an efficiency mindset that's also there preferably for accuracy and making sure that the right person on the team, even if I use the term team loosely, including those ancillary services and vendors that work with you, how can you best maximize that so that we always need an air traffic controller in the office most of the time. And going out to do errands is okay and perhaps even good for your mental health, but it's also at some point has a law of diminishing returns where it then means that you have to work late because you have emails to look at and now things fell through the cracks because you weren't at your computer, so it has its pluses and minuses.
You certainly lose efficiency when you're switching types of tasks right behind the screen versus out in the field. So the time block of the the event or whatever you're working on can be a great visual representation of how you're spending your time and just making sure that's the best and highest use. That's how you want to be spending your time.
Yes, and so that deserves a review. Then if you're not already doing this, this is what we sometimes refer to as the January letters, which includes the final closing statement from 2024 would go out in January of 2025. If you do this all year long and get them ready, and it's usually a paper letter, but if you also have it digitally and you're sending it by email, then you just want to be prepared for doing that without having to go back and do it all retroactively. Much harder. And if you haven't done it that way so far and you want to start doing it that way in 2025, I know when I bought my house, which is now a number of years ago, my agent didn't do this for me where I live. And I was like, oh, I think I would have liked that because when it came time to do my taxes, I had to dig through the folders to pull that out. And so I then got personal experience of how lovely it is to have your real estate agent think that thoughtfully about what you were going to need months after something happened was really lovely. And then another transparency element here is posting goals, what the office area is. Is that a spreadsheet? Is that you have something on a shared document? Is that something in a report that you go over once a week or once a month if you don't all work in the same office? So being able to have something where you can stay on track with goals and in the reality is something to think about if it's working this year or what you might want to do next year instead. Documentation and resources. This is an interesting one for finishing or updating your procedure manual, and then also a list of recommended vendors in buyer and seller resource materials. So procedure manuals, Laura, right? They're almost really never done. They're done for
finish.
now.
I love the word finish. It's so optimistic, but also maybe misleading, right? I mean, I think at least finish off the section or the few, SOPs or standard operating procedures you wanted to create or wanted to update. And then, just knowing it's always going to be that work in progress. I think it's one of the things we just have to chunk out, which sections we want to work on and tackle them in a manageable way. So potentially it's, just getting all of the listing appointment SOPs done by the end of the year, something like that. And then that's already a great goal and something that you can, demonstrate progress on. And I think most of the time I've seen, with these big agents, like they're just so glad someone's working on it and seeing forward momentum that that's ultimately the whole ball game, right? Is to be able to just sort of always be pushing the ball forward there.
Yes, and there's two perspectives on this. Thank you. One is follow the money, and the other is delegation. So if you need to prioritize which sections should I look at to update or to make sure is accurate, follow the money is the listings and the buyers. And we've had a lot of changes with NAR settlement this year on how buyers transactions and buyer relationships are managed. So that might certainly be one to look at. Do you have the steps documented of how it takes place in your office and with your agent, so that that is now easily accessed? So that's follow the money, is get a deal, keep a deal, close a deal, follow the money. The other in terms of delegate is, if you were going to have someone help you, whether that would be a runner, a virtual assistant, an agent that did certain tasks out of the office for you that was on the team, then how would you tell them what to do where you weren't just talking about it every time you needed somebody to do it? That becomes now those procedures you want to document so you can easily delegate. An example of that sometimes is open houses. Do you have an open house process that your agent likes to have followed so they can have other agents host open houses at their listings? But we don't want those open houses done the way that agent wants to do them. We want those open houses run the way your agent likes to have them run. So that needs to be something that is spelled out. And then when, you know, Jimmy says, yes, I'll do it on Saturday, you say, great, Jimmy. Here's how we do open houses. And that's either an email or a PDF, or you share whatever that document is, or you print something out. But if you want something done with a guest book and lights on and go early and, you know, we have a client who burns a particular scent of candle in all his listings. So when people walk into the listing, they know who the agent is, who's the listing agent. The same light bulbs are used in the lamps, right? Like having some kind of a flair in your brand. If you have that and want that, then you have to outline that, teach that, and then have that documented so it's easy, because you could have all kinds of different agents helping you in that example of an open house.
Yes, and even just an email, I helped one client just draft an email of expectations of, you know, how quickly you'll get a recap over
Yes.
about how many, you know, people attended, or whether you got any contact information, or just, you know, feedback or some things like that. So that it's super clear, like, congratulations, you've been chosen to, you know, host this open house for our team. Here's what we expect. Here's who to contact if there's a problem, you know, those kinds of things. Clear as kind, right? Says Brene Brown. So we want to set everybody up for success, because, and it's really just the product of so many frustrated phone calls and incidents. It's like, we might as well just tell them ahead of time what we want them to do. Not that they're always going to do it, because sometimes they, you know, we can't control whether someone reads an email or whatever, but we can certainly hold them to the standard once we set it in writing.
Yes. And compliance is a completely different issue. But what we have certainly learned by the grace of how we are blessed of working with such high quality agents at the top of their game so often, is that the way many of your agents operate is not the way many other agents operate. And so it really is an opportunity to raise the bar in the industry. But you can't assume that they do business the same way, because they haven't been exposed to the kind of quality training, the kind of quality tools that you may have been exposed to. So it's time to be able to set that stage of, this is how we like to have it done, and then get an agreement that they'll do it. So then it's easier to hold that standard to account.
I really like the one also about updating the list of recommended vendors. Preferably this would be more than once a year, but because, you know, it's always going to be changing, or it potentially could change your experience with these different vendors. And so we like to have in the vendor list like a column for some notes about, okay, you know, because you're not going to take someone off your vendor list because of potentially one bad experience, unless it was a really bad experience. But if you notice a pattern, right, this is just like a moment to do some more weeding, some more purging, and check out, is this someone we really want to work with? And if it's not, you know, doing some research on getting other people to replace them as your preferred vendor for things. So it's just a moment in time to do an audit and make sure that the people we're recommending are ones we've really had a good experience with recently.
And they might be good at under $1 million or over $1 million. They might be good for handyman versus more general contractor kind of oversight of a bigger project. You know, so you have those kind of stipulations that you learn from the experience of what was it like to have them do a particular project with you. So I love that. Presentation and preparation is really getting ready for agents to be able to have a successful appointment no matter when it comes. Because it's also possible that they go to a holiday party and they're going to get to do a listing presentation. And so are we ready? Or they really have, you know, goals for first quarter. And so do they want to update their listing materials? Is there anything that they need to change about that? If they haven't updated their buyer consultation materials over this year, and they really want to do that, then how do we carve out the time to get that done so that they can feel confident about that? Are you needing to track now, depending on what you call it where you are, that there is a buyer agency agreement that has been signed with a buyer? And so where do you track and where do you store that, because they don't have a purchase agreement yet, but we are potentially showing them property. And so now what is that system that's been put in place, and is it working? And what is the follow-up to it? Or does it need to be reviewed or refreshed? Or so you're just looking at that flow of, once again, follow the money. Are we set up to get a deal when the opportunity would present itself?
And
And
also,
then-
I like that, you know, that your closed volume from the previous year, you're going to need to update all the stats, right?
Yes.
And especially people who like to kind of keep a list of neighborhoods that they've sold in, or, number of transactions or volume or whatever the metrics are. It's a good moment to update them.
Yes, and then sometimes agents, right, like to do a summary marketing piece of where they sold property or what neighborhoods, or a picture of every listing they sold. Or so is there any kind of cumulative marketing piece that they want to do and or update in their listing presentation or in their marketing calendar? So all these statistics fit into that. And the final category is systems and support. And this develop updated action plans or checklists in the transaction management system to be able to see, is everything that you're doing actually on the list? And, you know, there are different sort of camps of thought about this. We like to think of checklists as prompts. If you're doing it out of memory, memory's not a system, and therefore it's also not duplicatable with another person who isn't carrying around your brain in a box. So we need to be able to get what you know into a format. Sometimes that becomes the standard operating procedure that's more and more detailed, because that checklist might be overwhelming looking, but those two things then need to get connected so that someone could still go to it and see, make a copy of the key. Like, you can't just assume they know to make a copy of the key when they're new and it says put the key in the lockbox. I mean, it is common sense, but at the same time, we need to be able to make sure that those steps are listed. Things like draft a template letter for sellers to explain the offer process. If there are elements of the sale and the transaction where you or your agent find yourselves talking through something that isn't a template, then this is a chance to be able to put that into place. And set up with your agent with necessary tools and systems for their return, including prospecting phone numbers, past client, center of influence support. And this also goes to the workflow. Pay attention to where you have duplication and where you have a disjointed workflow. If you're entering data in one place, you're entering data in another place, you're entering data in another place, that is duplication. That is an opportunity for error and is inefficient. So is there an opportunity to have a Zapier link? We have very dear trusted colleagues at realsync.com, Scott Solari and his team, who work with real estate agents in their tech stack and how things can be automated and go from one software to another. So if you want to review that, check out realsync.com to be able to see how they can manage that for you, so that you're really looking at if things are coming in on a text message, you're having to copy and paste that and send it to yourself in an email. You're taking that email and then copying and pasting that to get it into Trello. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Because that workflow wasn't really designed to be like that, but people have become so attached to their phone for delegation, then see what does that need to look like in the workflow. And sometimes what that means is that there needs to be an iPhone and a Mac computer so you can see everything, or it needs to be a voice over internet phone number that then gets connected to your desktop so that you can see material. So just think about where you may have duplication or where you may have a disconnect in the workflow that creates a workaround so that you have accuracy, transparency, and efficiency, which are things that just make agents' ears ring with joy, that they know, right, that we have got their back in terms of accuracy, efficiency, effectiveness, and that it's giving great service, and that it also, really helps people not have to repeat themselves, or I thought I told you that, or I sent it to you in a text and I got lost in there. So this is, once again, sort of full circle, where the perspective in administration and operations is so valuable, because the agents are just doing the best they can to move information and get a deal, keep a deal. So your perspective on what it's like to receive the information or process the information is valuable to be able to let them know what that really takes, what that really looks like, and then preferably to come to them with an idea of a solution of how that could be even better, that doesn't require too many habit changes. So it's not too painful for anyone involved.
It's fun because I noticed, the agents, they like to accumulate tools. They go to a conference and hear all these other people are using this thing, and it's so great, and we would like to implement it. And so you end up just like layering tools on top of each other, and oftentimes they don't just natively talk to each other. I think one team, the sort of like the highest we've seen, and they knew that this was an issue, was like someone was there, the admin was inputting information in 7 different locations, just because they had just gotten all these different lead gen sources and databases, and they want to keep the original one, and they have one for the broker, a CRM from the brokerage, and they need to put information. And so we're kind of made the comparison of like, we'd like it to be set up like New York City, right? Where you're like in a grid and everything has its flow, but it's really like Athens, right? Where we're just building on top of layers of history. And if you keep digging, oh yeah, that's the one we put in 2019. And there's the one that we've been using since 2007, and so it's just, you're the only one who really sees what the effects of that accumulation and the inefficiencies that are created by it. They just see the results and sort of what the shiny thing and what they think is going to be great for the business. So it's a great opportunity to evaluate that tech stack. I think Kathleen might be frozen. So I'll wrap up here. Does anyone have any questions or things that you want us to cover before we finish our time together? You can pop it over in the chat. Otherwise, we're just so grateful for your time and attention. We know that you have a million things going on and a million other places. Hi, Jessica. I'm so glad you liked it. Yeah, that you could be right now. And so we appreciate your time, your attention, your talent. And we're really just so grateful to have you in our community. So I shared a few resources in the chat if you wanted to check those out, and then we'll see if we can send those out also with the recording. So you'll have access to those. And congratulations again to Nancy on your retirement coming up soon. We're really so thrilled for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
My
It's been a long time.
Yeah, deserve it. Enjoy it.
I am. I will.
Excellent. Okay, take care, everyone. Thanks so
you.
much.
Bye.
Have a great
Bye.
rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.